Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The Stock Movers Podcast, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
Let's get a look at some stocks on the move today. Bloomberg News managing editor for the Bloomberg Markets Live blog, Christina Kino, is here with us. What is on your radar?
Well, we have to talk about it. Amazon and Apple, of course, Tim. Let's start with Amazon. Well, yeah, because Carol, you're exactly right? It's, what is going on with that miss in the operating profit for the current quarter? I mean, AWS, though, was slightly a beat. It's a 17% gain to $29.3 billion. So, well, it's not a beat. It's more in line with analyst estimates, but that is still the slowest growth in a year. So probably a lot of questions over whether the valuations that we're seeing for Amazon at the moment, does that still justify the potential, particularly on the AI front? And of course, probably a lot of questions over their supply chain, because that is the one thing that is on a lot of people's minds. Remember that Amazon made headlines earlier this week because there was a report that said the company was considering displaying the cost of tariffs to shoppers, which the White House lambasted them for. And ultimately, they said that they wouldn't implement it, even though they were considering it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fascinating. What else in terms of color and commentary we'll get around these numbers, because there wasn't a lot initially in the press releases, but we did mention that Amazon shares definitely taking a hit here in the aftermarket. What else?
Well, Apple, of course, the big focus there is that second quarter Greater China revenue missing estimates just ever so slightly, $16 billion versus an estimate for $16.8 billion. But of course, again, that supply chain question, right, especially now that tariffs are front and center, probably going to take center stage for that analyst call. The good news, I suppose, is that the iPhone revenue beating slightly here, $46.84 billion versus an estimated $45.94 billion. We did know that Apple was slowly starting to shift its production line, right, from China, even though that was a weak spot for them. We did get a report last week saying that they were seeking to import most of the iPhones that they sell in the U.S. from India by the end of next year. But that's, of course, an ongoing process, and clearly that's not yet complete. And so there's still a lot of exposure for them when it comes to this U.S.-China trade tension.
You reported for Bloomberg outside of the U.S. for many years, London, Singapore. What was your view then? And you've been here in the U.S. for a few years, but what was the view then on Apple and Apple products? High end of the market, luxury market? Like, what was the view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was still considered one of the best, when it comes to the consumer phone sector. Though I have to say, I did see a lot more Androids in Europe and in Asia, because there was a kind of Samsung competition that was coming around. And I was one of the early adopters, actually. Remember those folding phones that Samsung had? I had one of those giant folding phones. It was pretty cool, though it got a little too big for me, actually. I had to switch eventually. I'm still an Android user, though, which I get ridiculed for constantly by my friends in the U.S.
That's so funny. Shares of Apple, though, we should point out, down about 2.5% in the aftermarket. Got another name for us?
Yeah, we're looking at Delta this afternoon. We're just seeing some small gains here in the post-market, 0.7% last we looked. And that was because we reported earlier, Bloomberg News reported that Jim Graham, who is the head of its Endeavor Air regional carrier, will step down, but will still remain with a parent company. There was an Endeavor flight that was involved in an accident on February 17th, in which one of their aircrafts hit the runway, tilted to the right, and left 21 of 80 people on the flight injured. Though Delta was declining to cite specifically what the reason was for this move, but we did get that news slightly before the close today. And we see Delta shares up slightly in the post-market.
They are, and it looks like they also, am I reading this right? Yep, authorizing a $1 billion share buyback program, right? So that is certainly something that can get investors excited.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.